You'll remember our friend Simon Kent from the Sun News Network. Well, guess what? He's now the managing editor of Breitbart London in Great Britain, and he joins us now via Skype. Simon, great to see you again. How are you keeping?
I'm keeping very well, Ezra, and despite the miserable weather over on this side of the pond, all is good.
Well, it's nice to see you again, and we love London for so many reasons. It's the mother country of Canada, and it also is where we get our heritage of modern liberty, the Magna Carta, the great battles for the rule of law, and also for freedom of speech. Some of the great champions of free speech, like John Milton. If it weren't for the United Kingdom, we wouldn't be who we are. But Simon, you bring news today that Britain has lost some of its Britishness and that free speech isn't just running out, it might already be gone. Tell me what the news is.
Well, free speech is not quite so free in the UK anymore. This is a story that we broke yesterday here at Breitbart in London. This was broken by us. There was a cartoon exhibition set down for London next month. It was going to be a Draw Mohammed cartoon exhibition. And your viewers will be familiar with this. There was one in the US last year. And the organiser had been trying desperately to find space to go ahead with this, and interestingly had to spend a huge amount of time also persuading security organisations to let this go ahead. And we broke the story yesterday. It will not be going ahead here in London next month as planned, because Scotland Yard has basically said we can't guarantee your security in this Draw Mohammed competition, and so they said call it off. And unfortunately the organiser had to do just that, which I think is quite extraordinary here in this country with, as you point out, a tradition of free speech, a tradition of freedom of expression, and also a couple of hundred years of tradition of cartooning and making fun of things and making fun of people. And this is not going to happen now.
Yeah. Well, I was reading this riveting story. There's two stories in Breitbart London. One is the news itself, and the other is the tale told by the organizer. 200 different art galleries were approached. 200. And the vast majority of them said no. Just hearing the word Mohammed, they got scared. What does it say that one of the world's leading cities, London, I mean, a great city by any regard, with great art galleries, would be terrified not of a violent event, but of an image that could, I mean, it just feels like a preemptive surrender. I can only imagine what Winston Churchill, if he were alive today, or I'm looking at that great portrait behind you, Margaret Thatcher. I can't believe that the great champions of the United Kingdom in history, and I'm just talking about the last 100 years, go back the centuries. I just don't think this is what London is supposed to be like, especially the cultural class, the ideas class. I think it's a great disappointment to all of us in the world also who look to London as a great thought capital.
Well, you and I keep using the word great as in Great Britain, but I think it takes a little bit of the great out of Great Britain, doesn't it, when the capital, London, one of the great cities in the world, can't go ahead with this exhibition. And Anne-Marie Waters wrote very strongly and movingly for Breitbart London about the challenge she had. She's a former UKIP candidate here. She has a very strong, high profile. She writes very well. She's very eloquent as she set out what she had to go through, the amount of rejection that she had to suffer. And in the end, it was Scotland Yard, again, a police force you would have thought would have fallen on the side of freedom of expression, would have stood with the people who wanted this competition to go ahead. Yes, some feelings might have been hurt, but those should have paled into comparison with the fact this competition should have gone ahead for so many reasons. Just one of them being the right to freedom of expression. Even if someone doesn't like it, even if a small interest group has their feelings hurt, it should go ahead. And it really diminishes London, and it diminishes this country, this nation, that it didn't go ahead. And a lot of people are shaking their heads at the outcome. You look at the online comments that we got here at Breitbart London about the whole issue and the amount of shares in this extraordinary story that I don't think has gone away, because hopefully soon someone will put their head above the parapet. Someone from the arts community will say, well, let's go ahead, we'll do this, just like our cousins in the US did last year.
Yeah. You know, I mean, the UK and Salman Rushdie, of course, took a strong stand against Islamic censorship in the 80s. And the country stood behind Rushdie in a number of ways through police protection. Now, he no longer spends most of his time in London. But what was incredible to me about the story, reading the point of view of the organizer, was that in the end she was convinced not to do this by the cops, by Scotland Yard, that they were the ones who said, no, you shouldn't do it, we can't protect you. I mean, what is the purpose of a state? The primary purpose of a state is not to provide you with breakfast or lunch or daycare, and it's to protect your physical integrity from violence. And if the cops are now the ones saying, you shouldn't do it, we highly recommend you don't do it, someone's going to get killed, this will be on your conscience, I'm sure that those are the kind of things that were said. That to me is depressing. When the people whose primary job is safety say, don't do it because someone just might get hurt, wink, wink. Not that they would hurt them, God forbid, but that these cops would rather take the path of least resistance and, oh, don't make any fuss. I wonder if they've ever told some of these extreme radical Muslim rallies that you see in London that say death to those who insult the Prophet Mohammed. I don't think the cops have ever shut them down. I find that the most depressing part, Simon, is that the authorities themselves have thrown in the towel. I mean, they stood by Salman Rushdie, sorta, but now they're not even trying. What do you think of that? Am I being too tough on Scotland Yard?
No, I think you're right on the money there, Ezra. I think you made a very good point. Salman Rushdie was given the full provision and protection of the state when he was fighting orders, and people were trying to literally behead him, kill him, and then because he wrote a novel, he wrote a book that offended some people. And you point out the marches and rallies that we see in London, all around London. They're not happening every day and night, certainly, but they do happen. And people march on the streets in the name of freedom of speech and the freedom of expression. Well, good luck to them. They're allowed to do that. By the same token, someone should also be allowed to have an exhibition, a Draw Mohammed exhibition, and embrace the right to upset people, embrace the right to make them feel uncomfortable, and maybe push them a bit to look at themselves, look at their faith, look at their religion. But this is not going to happen here because Scotland Yard had a manifest failure of political will and apply the same freedoms that they would apply to a Muslim march in central London. Well, those same rights and the same protection should be afforded by the state to someone like Anne-Marie Waters in an entirely admirable attempt to have a Draw Mohammed exhibition here in London. I don't think the police nor the state have come out of this well.
Simon Kent of Breitbart London, great to talk to you today. We'll talk to you again soon. Thanks, my friend.